Right. Well, welcome. Thank you all for your interest in the program. The CHCF Healthcare Leadership Program is administered by Health Force Center at UCSF, and I'm Gina Lima, Program Manager at Health Force Center. So during our time together, I'm going to provide a quick overview of the program, share some highlights about this upcoming cohort 23, and we'll have two alumni share their experiences, and they'll be willing to answer any of the questions that you all have, as well as I can too. So thank you again for your interest in being here. For those of you who aren't so familiar with Health Force Center, we're your resource for everything connected to the people of healthcare and their champions. And we accomplish that through research and action, consulting and evaluation, programs that build leadership and resilience, like this program, connections across sectors, that is also a large component of this program, all with a focus on equity. Now, for the leadership program specifically, the alumni of the call will attest to the fact that this fellowship really is a journey of exploration and discovery, both inwards, how you feel about yourself, and outward, how you show up as a leader. Part of that will push you to think differently and approach problems differently. You'll make meaningful connections with people in your cohort, as well as the larger alumni network. And these people will be your resource to lean on, to teach, to learn from as you go through this growth period of discovery and exploration. Of course, we know vulnerability is key to transformation, and so we really encourage that throughout the fellowship program. We ask you to open yourself up to doing things in different ways that might feel uncomfortable along the way, but we try to provide a support system through small groups of your peers and other forms of network and support that allow you to try on those new hats and feel safe to try out new things. And hopefully the alumni on the call will share their experience with that as well. The program objectives fall in these four areas, and because we believe that the most effective leaders are aware of all of these components. So starting with the self, yourself, we put emphasis on better understanding yourself so that you can better work with others. So we have various assessments that gather data around how you operate in the world and how others perceive you. We also have a lot of sessions and tools around communication, including executive coaching. At the organizational level, we look to improve your effectiveness in working with teams. There's content around negotiating and influencing others, finance, as well as business components throughout the fellowship program. And then there's the network. We know that there's a lot of strength in weak ties, not just the people that you know directly. And so we intentionally integrate a lot of networking opportunities within your immediate cohort, but also the larger alumni network, which is now about 650 alumni from all over the state, who I'm sure many of you know are very amazing change makers, and they're very excited to help other people in the network, whether it's with their work or just their personal and individual leadership growth. And then we also look at the environment. So what are things happening beyond your organization that you should be aware of? Examples include health policy and the general healthcare marketplace. So throughout the entire program, our goal is to encourage you and support you to push beyond your comfort zone, to that space where learning and development really blossom, so you can be the most impactful. And how do we do all that? In order to achieve this, we weave these curriculum threads throughout the program experience. You'll see this content more than once throughout the fellowship because we want the behaviors and the skills to become second nature. So ultimately, you will use the new skills from the program far beyond the fellowship. And that's why we talk about lifelong learning. Now, for those of you who want more details, how are you actually going to get all that information and experience? So first of all, seminars are a large component of the program. There are 6 seminars over the 2-year period. These are 2 to 4 days of dedicated time for your learning, new content, opportunity to apply the skills you learn in the sessions, as well as a heavy emphasis on networking and connecting with people in your cohort and the larger network. In between the seminars, there is intersession work, which might look like reading or small exercises to practice some of the skills that you learned in the previous seminar or to prepare you for the upcoming seminar. All fellows have a certain number of hours of executive coaching, and this is a chance to dive deeper into your self-assessments and to further your individual leadership goals. The California Health Improvement Project is what we like to call the CHIP. This project spans the duration of the program, and it's a concrete way for you to practice implementing your leadership skills. We do ask that you pick an ambitious issue to solve, but we don't expect you to come to the program knowing what that is. And there's a lot of structure in place to hone in on that idea, your idea and the project, and to flesh it out throughout the program. And it's definitely not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect throughout the whole 2 years, and that's okay. The goal is to make an improvement in your organization and in healthcare, and to practice design thinking skills and try out new approaches while you complete your project. Pods and pod advisors. So pods are small groups of fellows. So the whole cohort is 32 fellows. Pods are about groups of 5 who are in close geographic proximity to each other. We ask that pods meet monthly in between the seminars, and they are led by an alum who is your pod advisor, been through, what you've been through in the program, and helps guide you as a small group. It helps support you through the project work and just your own leadership development throughout the program. The pods are a really unique place because there's just a great sense of emotional security for people to share their leadership challenges and often their personal challenges that come up in life. And a lot of pods stay connected far after the fellowship ends. And again, I'll mention networking, whether it's with your pods or your network. There is intentional time for networking that we provide in the structure of the program, and we encourage all participants to reach out to the alumni, and people are so excited to support one another. If they hear you're an alum, they're like, how can I help you? So it's really a great body of knowledge and experience in the alumni network. And I should have mentioned there definitely will be time for questions after this, because I know I'm flying through the slides. So if you would like to put your questions in the chat along the way, please do. Otherwise, I'll make sure we have enough time at the end as well. So that was an overview of the program, specifically for cohort 23. I'll give you a minute to read the recruitment focus areas. And if you have any questions, please let me know towards the end. Moving on to tuition. The tuition is tiered depending on what type of organization you're coming from. And there is tuition assistance available for fellows that are working at safety net organizations, specifically in the Inland Empire, San Joaquin Valley, and the San Diego area, because those are the geographical regions that we're focusing on in this cohort. Now for next steps, please apply by June 9th if you think this is a program for you. June 9th is when the application closes. In July, select applicants will be invited for an interview They're virtual 1-hour interviews with 2 program alum. You'll be notified in July, but the interviews themselves will be held on August 22nd and 23rd. And then the final cohort will be selected in October with a Seminar 1 start date in early December, 6th through 8th. Okay, so that's the overview and the logistics. Now I get to pass the baton over to our alumni. Chris, I see your face, so I'm gonna start with you. Chris and Jennifer, thank you both for being here. Chris, can I pass the ball to you, ask you to introduce yourself, and then share 1 or 2 things of value that you got from the program and what still resonates with you today?
Absolutely. Can I confirm that my microphone's working? My microphone's working?
Yes.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. Gina, thank you so much for inviting me to be here and get a chance to talk about my experience. I would say that my CHCF experience, cohort 17, was amazing. I thought it was a invaluable experience for me in my career at the time, in my career now. It actually helped me develop and progress to the position that I am now. So just a little brief background. I am an orthopedic surgeon. I work at UC Davis Medical Center in Sacramento. I am the chief of our hand, upper extremity, and microvascular surgery section in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery. I started at CHCF. At that point, I was an assistant professor, and I was not yet the chief. And I will say that there are probably 3 things I'd like to highlight that were invaluable about my experience. One was the relationships that I made, both with my people in the same cohort, with the alum that we had multiple opportunities to interact with, and then, of course, with the CHCF faculty members, longtime workers like Gina. It was amazing. Now, I'd like to highlight that the whole program is set up to help you help healthcare in California, and it does that. I think the specific curriculum was quite useful for me. One, leadership, how to take what we learn and extrapolate it to what we're doing every day. I'd not been privy to being an experience like that before. It's comprehensive, right? So we start out learning a little bit about ourselves and our personality type and how we use that to interact with others, and essentially how to be our best selves while doing what we do, each of us individually, to further healthcare in California. I also think that the coaching sessions that were a part of the group were particularly useful for me. And then the CHIP, which was the CHIP project for me was challenging. I think it's supposed to be challenging. It was longitudinal, so it's in some ways a case study and an example of how to use what we learn directly, but then also it's a learning experience to learn how to do similar improvement projects in the future, right? So for those of us who work directly in a hospital that are involved with quality improvement projects, this was a great introduction on how to approach that in an organized fashion, in an effective fashion. I will say that I think in general, when it comes to innovation, whether it's innovation for whatever sector it might be, but definitely with quality improvement, often what we tend to do is think about whatever idea we have, figure out how to do that idea, and then when we get to some semblance or some model of that idea, trying to explain to everybody else why this is important and why they should accept it. And in general, that's probably not the best way to go about doing it, right? And one of the things that I was taught to focus on was getting to know what every one of the stakeholders actually needs first. It seems simple, but that sort of design thinking was particularly helpful for me in my institution, right? The goal is not to have a great idea and then explain to the world why your idea is so great and why they need to adopt it, but figure out, does your idea fit the space that it needs to fit? Will it accomplish what it needs to accomplish? You don't want to spend hours and resources into doing something that by the time you get it out, people aren't, it's not useful. It's not what needs to be done. So I can't say how enough how useful, how important this experience was for me. And still being in contact with the people of my pod, the people of my cohort has been great. I've made friends for life.
Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.
And if we could just hold questions, I want to pass the ball next to Jennifer. Thank you for being here. Maybe can you two share what was most meaningful for you from the program and what still resonates with you today? And please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Jennifer Miyamoto Echeverria. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I currently work for Blue Shield of California as Director of Social Programs and Services with our Medi-Cal population. So it's our Blue Shield Promise organization, which is it's another, it's our Medi-Cal plan within Blue Shield. For me, I'm actually the most recent graduating cohort, which is cohort 20. We just finished up in September. And very similarly to what Christopher said, it was an amazing experience. I myself, before I joined Blue Shield, I was in the mental health realm. I worked for a county contracted organization in Los Angeles County for 14 years, started off as a psychiatric social worker, moved into management pretty quickly, and then eventually finished my time there as chief of social services. And so I had a lot of experience in leadership, but I also didn't have much opportunity for growth and development. Just throughout the course of my life, I've always kind of gravitated to positions of leadership, whether it was voluntary or in my work settings. However, when it comes to development, it always kind of felt like I was trying to figure it out myself, all by myself. And so that was what really drew me to applying for this program. Is after speaking to one of my chief medical officers at Blue Shield, who I reported to, she is actually an alum herself from cohort 10. And for her, when I joined Blue Shield, I was like, I'm in this corporate world now in many ways. It's healthcare, but it's a different type of healthcare that I'm used to kind of dealing with, and was pretty overwhelmed by it. And so I kind of said to her, should I go back and get an MBA? Should I, what should I do? I want to continue to learn, but I'm just trying to figure out the best path for me. And so that's when she told me about her experience with CHCF as a fellow in cohort 10. And it just, I gravitated to it. And that was a conversation we had in 2019. The pandemic hit. We were working from home, and another colleague who was also in the program, I think cohort 8, she sent me the application. I decided to apply. And it was the best decision I've ever made when it comes to my career. Because for me, I'm a naturally introverted person. And I lived in LA for the longest time. And so I kind of knew that landscape. And I now was working with San Diego in my current job. But I needed to know more and expand my knowledge about just all the different areas of healthcare throughout the state. And it gave me that opportunity. I am a recent graduate from it, still very, very close to all of my cohort members. And I, like Christopher said, I believe these are lifelong friends. We just had a meeting about a week ago, and 14 of us showed up of our cohort to support somebody who was presenting from our cohort, but also because we just missed each other. It was something that kind of fed us that we needed. You have your work life, you have the roles that you have and the responsibilities that you have in this work that you all, I'm sure, do. Sometimes you just need something for yourself. And it was an opportunity to not just learn and kind of grow in what you understand about this healthcare space that you can apply to your job or apply to maybe future endeavors. But it's also an opportunity to connect with others and realize, I'm not alone in these really difficult decisions I have to make day in and day out. And I'm not alone in this thought of, do I stay where I'm at? Am I happy where I'm at? Are there other opportunities elsewhere? And to be able to talk to people about their experiences. And I think that's one of the things that was really great for me, to not only talk to alum and my cohort members who were in different positions, had gone through various experiences in their careers, they're really honest and open with you about what's worked for them, what's not. And it just feels like a group that, you can connect with. So for me, it was the networking aspect of it. It was the learning opportunities. The chip was not easy, but at the same time, like Christopher said, it forced you to kind of think in a different way. Because again, you kind of go into this assumption about how to get things moving in an organization. And really it kind of caused us to kind of step back, rethink, and think about how to strategize presenting information or presenting ideas in a way that really you can get that or entice people to be on board with you because you're appealing to what their needs are too. So overall, excellent program. To me, I mean, even at the end of our session last week, it was like, so are we going to the one in fall? Like, what are we doing in the fall? So, it's a great opportunity to connect, meet more people, and really just feel like, the work that you're doing is hard. This is time for you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. Gave me goosebumps. Yes. Now, I invite you all to either raise a hand, type in the chat, or just unmute yourself. What questions you have for Jennifer, Chris, or myself?
Can I ask one?
Please.
How did you incorporate it in your daily routine? Like, how did you manage your clinical workload with the program?
You want to go first, Christopher?
Please go ahead.
Okay. For me, it was tough. I mean, it's kind of, I would say, did I have things daily? Not always, but there were readings that came out. I needed to kind of structure it in my evenings to make sure that I was working towards my chip, and also communicate with members of, CHCF or my pod when I'm running into stuff that I just am stuck in. And, what you find is that while challenging, there's also a lot of support. So I think a lot of us tend to be extremely high achievers and put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do things a certain way. And you'll find that there isn't one way of doing something. And I think that was what was really rewarding, but then also the care and the support that my pod leader gave me, Gina gave me at times where I ran into some challenges about like, oh, I'm running a little bit late with this, or can I do this a little different or whatever. And there was flexibility in that. You carve out time just as you would with other requirements or things that you have in your life. But I think when I bump it up against just the value of the program itself, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. That's very well said, Jennifer. I don't know that I have a whole lot to add to that. I will say that I got support from our chair beforehand so that they knew that there were some days, every so often, there'd be a day taken off from work. It usually was an extended weekend, so there wasn't too much time off of work. And I think another thing that was useful was for the CHIP project, I tried to pick something that I was also concurrently working at, making happen at work, so that two things. One, I could work on this challenging project and put the time into it, because it does take time and time away from or time in addition. For me, it was a lot of time spent not at work, like weekends and some evenings, but I was concurrently working on something for CHCF and the CHIP, but also something for me and for work at the same time, which I think was useful both practically and mentally.
Thank you.
Could you perhaps talk a little bit more about your CHIP projects, how you selected them, what was the support you received from CHCF, how you implemented them, what sort of time commitment was required outside of, the formal CHCF structure?
I could go first for this one. I would say it's been several years now. Every year I'm less young than the year I was before, which is interesting to deal with. But I can't tell you exactly how much time. I can tell you, you asked how did I go about picking it and what did I work on? So
Sorry, I asked you like 20 questions at the same time, so you
Can you maybe just
yeah,
repeat that last part? Whatever I didn't answer, can you repeat?
sounds good. No, that's great.
Okay, is it? So I mean, what I chose was, so I actually changed my project. There were a couple of things. We were going through a period of flux where I was working, and both of my projects aim to help harness that flux into improved patient care at my institution. And I had what I thought was a great idea to begin with. And I kind of learned, like I hinted at before, that your great idea may be a great idea, but it may not be the idea that everybody wants. And you can't force a great idea on somebody. So after going through and doing a lot of interviews, part of our project required interviewing people, a certain number of hours interviewing a certain number of people. I changed my project into something that we were able to institute. And for us specifically, my project was, we had some difficulty getting access to operating room time for urgent patients. And my project was realizing that we couldn't materialize more operating rooms and more staff out of thin air, was to reassign and repurpose existing operating room space for urgent cases. So essentially incorporating our ambulatory surgery centers to take care of patients that didn't require intensive care, but did have acute cases or acute pathology, if that makes sense.
Just given the time, I want to offer, if maybe we can still open it up for a different question while we still both have Jennifer and Chris here, rather than moving on to Jennifer for this question.
I have a question. I'm just curious, for most of us here, we're kind of thinking through, I would assume, how to take it to the next level in our career, right? And so what made you select this program versus there's so many options for different programs, whether it's quality and safety initiatives at Harvard or a master's in medical management, there's so many options. Why specifically this one? What did you think that this one had to offer that the other career advancement programs did not?
Well, like I mentioned, for me, I was considering an MBA at some point, and because now I'm in this more corporate setting, but where I felt like I needed more development was really focused on healthcare in general. And I wanted to get a better landscape, not just of healthcare, but also healthcare within the state of California. And I've always worked with Medi-Cal or uninsured individuals. And so for me, I was drawn to the fact that this was very California focused and had layers of not just leadership, but also policy and networking and opportunities to get to know just how everything varies across the state. And so for me, I think it was helpful because not only did it allow me to still at least begin that development process at this level. I've been in leadership for probably about 15 years, but I felt like it was really speaking to what I wanted to do in healthcare. And it also connected me to people that were in this program years ago, and they've continued to move throughout their careers. And I actually have an ability to reach out to them and ask questions. And that's not always the case in some of the other programs that I could have considered, at least at that point.
You. I know we're at time. Yet, if you have any other questions, Chris and Jennifer might be able to save a couple of minutes. So don't be shy. And if not, you can still reach out afterwards. I'll put my email in the chat, my direct email. Otherwise, give me a call at Health Force Center. And if I can't answer your question directly, I will connect you to another alum who's been through it. We can give you more, just a different lens on the program. Okay. Thank you both, Jen and Chris, for joining us, and everybody for attending. Hope you all get your lunch. It's midday. If any other questions come up along the way, don't hesitate to ask.
Nice to see you. Thanks for letting me be here, and
you.
thank you everybody for having us speak. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.